great Bobby Belt.
Bobby Belt is an idiot.
Don't make me take off my belt.
Don't make me take off my belt.
We're not. Over to you, Bobby.
Is this Baltimore Raven being a little B? We'll talk about it here in a sec. First,
I already said yes, Mark Andrews.
this is a different one. This is Marlon Humphrey. We'll talk about if he's being a little B here in a little second for openly cheering against another team and openly admitting it's because I'm a hater. So we'll get to that here in just a second. First, some updates on the Cowboys coaching search. One, I think it's pronounced Shane. There's a guy on Twitter yesterday, Shan Shariff, was tweeting that an offer, I believe he said a 5-year offer is imminent. It's already been delivered. Is that what the guy said?
I did not. He did not. He said an offer is expected to come soon for Brian Schottenheimer.
Boy, and this place.
And the Cowboy fans are saying, do not come.
Do you want to be on air or not when it happens, when it breaks?
I want to be on air when that happens.
I don't know. I'm imagining the moment, and I don't think I'm going to have words. I think I'm going to be sitting here stunned silence.
I never want to be on the air when news breaks.
Oh, I absolutely would want to be on the air when that breaks. I would immediately want to go to
topic for the next day.
I'd want to go to the phones. Just go to the phones immediately.
Yes.
And just like, what do y'all think?
Because yesterday when I tweeted that, oh my gosh, I'm out, I'm done, I'm out, never again, I'm finished.
How much do you believe it? How much do you believe people being done if it's Schottenheimer?
None. So, I mean, there'll be some that are in there.
Because there are some people like Bassick who do get to that point where they're like, I'm not going to follow it anymore. I don't care.
So watch
like, do you think there are going to be a significant enough number of people that will notice?
In what metric?
We'll notice here next fall covering it. Interest level in terms of interaction with listeners or anything else.
You'll notice there may be a smaller following at the Star for the draft or AT&T. There may be.
I mean, we saw Oxnard was smaller. That was for sure.
Oxnard may be smaller. There may be less jersey sales in the offseason, but come September 10th or whatever day the opener is.
Will they finish number one in attendance?
Yeah, I mean, if they normally do, do they normally?
They normally do.
Yeah, then they will again because they have the biggest stadium and they're going to sell it out.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of fans from out of town want to come here and watch their favorite team. So.
Week 1 next week, we'll have a sellout crowd and a normal TV rating. Whatever, if it's a noon game, it'll be normal for a noon. If it's 3, normal for 3. 7, normal for 7. It's going to be normal. Everything is, and it happens every year.
Let's try to figure this out specifically. The idea, the thought process, because I think Brian Schottenheimer is legitimately a candidate here. Is it guaranteed they hire him? I don't know, but I think he's legitimately a candidate. I think he's legitimately part of their winnowing down of these are
why
our
else
guys.
Would they interviewed him for 3.5 hours?
Right, and they interviewed Saleh and they interviewed Frazier, and those were with the idea of, I think in part, could you be our defensive coordinator? I think similarly, hey, this gives us an official, because Brian Schottenheimer's out of contract. He doesn't have to be there. And so when he sits down, they can talk to him about official interview capacity. Hey, would you be open to doing this? What are you looking at here? Let's see if we can come to some sort of agreement with this or that. I do think he's part of this process, though, and I think they are actually considering him. And so if that's the case, and if it's like we've heard that it's Jerry, this is mainly Jerry kind of running this thing right now. What do you think Jerry's thought?
I don't know that it is Jerry. Let me explain why. Mm-hmm. By the way, for the record, just so we can judge, and I always got to keep a scoreboard on people. Nick Harris, Fort Worth Star-Telegram, does not believe, he is not hearing that Schottenheimer is going to get this job. Which
he also made sure to put at the bottom of that tweet. I want to make clear I'm not fighting with anyone or disputing anyone.
There, Nick.
Yeah, he's doing it in a respectful way. In terms of Jerry going out on his own solo, this is what I've gathered. And this is not from my big dog Schottenheimer source. This is
Jerry.
This is other people, yeah. I love the amount of people who think that we just have a Jerry Jones hotline.
They all think we're all you're being paid. Jerry's got you on the propaganda machine.
Jerry fed Bobby the McCarthy hit piece
He
information.
put up the Bob signal in the sky.
Yeah.
Time for the hit piece.
Yes. What would the Bob signal be? A plastic orange bottle?
A shot
Oh,
glass.
yeah, the orange. Yes, that'll be it.
So, here's what I was told. Stephen Jones actually wanted to make the McCarthy change after the Green Bay game. When they lost to the Packers, Stephen Jones was like, all right, Pops, we need to make a change. Jerry was not going to pay someone to sit on a beach. He was not going to just watch that money flush down the drain. So I think the feeling kind of is Steven loves Brian Schottenheimer. So I think the feeling kind of is like, Dad, you kept Mike. Look what ended up happening. You did it your way. It's funny. We have this balance beam of opposite methods failing. So Steven can say to Jerry, you kept Mike. I wanted to replace him. Look how it ended up. Go with Brian. I love him. Jerry can say to Steven, your little frugal free agent plans cost us Derrick Henry, got us absolutely destroyed and annihilated with as much criticism as been in my 15 years here covering the team with Choppy in DFW. So they both have that on each other if they wanted to.
Yeah.
But my understanding is Steven loves Brian and was down to make the change on McCarthy after the Packers. So when I hear this much Schottenheimer, it's hard for me to just, and I have not been told what I'm about to say, but I would deduce common sense. Steven's making a major push here since he loves Shotty, and it's not just rogue solo Jerry.
I think
Does that make sense?
Yes. I also think multiple players have provided their feedback that they would want Schottenheimer as the head coach. I do think that's happened.
And that's another thing that bothers me, and I'm going to be a chopocrite here. I'm gonna be a hypocrite. Man, I think all of us in the Metroplex have a feeling right now, and Wolchuk said it yesterday as part of his, I think it was Eric. How much do you want them to weigh in with Dak and Micah and Lamb say?
Yeah, how important is player input?
I think we're so I am. I'll speak for myself. I'm so pissed off at all of them. Not just the front office. I can't stand when some of these players spout off as well. I'm like, I don't care what you have to say, and I'm not going to value, and you don't have a say. And we've long time had this debate over Luka. Like, should Luka Doncic get to pick the next coach? Should Luka Doncic have a say? More in part to appease him versus his basketball genius saying that's the right fit. And when I hear that they're going to rely on, or if they are, the players here, I'm like, for what? These players don't know what it takes to get it done.
Did Tom Brady earn a decision in the coaching staff? I mean,
right.
You can make the case that he did. Like,
by the way, great point from Matolo. I thought Brady loved McCarthy so much. I thought he told us he spewed on national TV. You're not going to interview him in Vegas, Tom? All your little public fake ass kissing that you did. Mike McCarthy's this. You're not even going to interview him. He's such a great coach. He's top coach in the league. Why aren't you interviewing him? Anyway, back to you.
If you want to say Brady's got would have a say in a coaching decision, I mean, I could buy that. If you've never done anything, like, has Dak earned the right to have a say in the coach? I mean, he's gotten paid,
yeah,
right, and then you have a lot invested in him, and from that standpoint,
the voice in your locker room,
and he's the leader. So from that standpoint, yeah, he has. But are you going to give that much power to one player?
I don't think it's one player, though. I do think a lot of players want him here. Here's the thing. We all sit here and we get frustrated and we can go, why aren't they doing more of the McVay stuff? Why aren't they doing more of the Shanahan stuff? There have been players on offense last couple of years who have asked, why aren't we doing more of the McVay stuff? Why aren't we doing more of the Shanahan stuff? And I think Brian Schottenheimer was somebody in agreement with them and pushing for that stuff, and they all felt like they were being met with resistance. And so I think players feel like, that's the dude who's been on our side with the things we've wanted to do. That's the dude who's been on the side of what the league trends are saying and was fighting back against certain
why
things.
Was he never thought of and labeled a trendy person in Seattle or his previous stops?
I think that there was a misconception.
I cannot be sold. I'm not fighting you on this.
Yeah.
I cannot be sold that Brian Schottenheimer is Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan when he was made fun of for being prehistoric in every other stop.
So before Seattle, he was a trendy name. When he got to Seattle, I think there was a misconception about how much they were holding back Russ versus getting the most out of him. And I think history looks back on it and says they got the most out of Russ. Where they, at the time, people felt like, you're limiting him or you're doing this or that. And then when we look at it in retrospect, it's like, oh, his three best years basically were in that system. And as soon as he was allowed to cook, it went really sideways.
Yeah, but wait. Weren't his 3 or 4 best years when he was allowed to cook?
But they're most prolific. I mean, from a winning standpoint.
No,
though,
but that
yeah.
was
And by the way, those were under Brian, as we detailed yesterday.
Yeah, and but I'm saying at that time, people still felt like you were restricting and you were not completely freeing him up. He was very, very efficient, and it led to some high volume numbers, but he wasn't just throwing the ball 40 times a game. And that's what people were oftentimes clamoring for, was like, look, he's throwing 35 touchdowns. Why don't you just let him be Peyton Manning? And there was always a dispute of like, you guys are kind of restricting him a little bit from doing what he wants to do. And I think it's just they figured out what he does best.
Like Walchuk's texting me right now, and he had this as part of his rant yesterday. I'm tired of hearing that Dak Prescott needs to stay in the same system. I'm sick and tired.
I don't
of
think Dak cares about that. And I heard Walchuk say that. Zach, I meant to mention that you yesterday when you said Dak doesn't want to learn a new set. That's not true. I think Dak has beliefs about what he wants to do. Dak has like certain beliefs about what he wants to do, but I don't think it's like I don't want to learn. I don't want to. It's not that at all. If they were able to convince him of the ideas of a new system, he would be on board. It's just he has certain things where it's like, I think this is what we excel at. This is what we do well. This is what we need to lean into. I also think Brian Schottenheimer has evolved over time. I don't think Brian Schottenheimer's thought process is necessarily the same as it was 10 years ago, because he does.
I hope not.
Well, I mean, you listen to him in the cuts that Sean played. Like, I mean, he does talk about stealing from other people and following trends and learning from things.
Yeah.
And yet, what we did hear in one of those clips is, as much as he likes it and it's reflective, he did say that Mike McCarthy says things in those interviews that were referencing back 30 years ago, things he heard his dad saying. Where it's like there clearly was a commitment to some old school philosophy from what was being implemented here. And I do think Schottenheimer at times was lobbying on behalf of players. I would not hire Brian Schottenheimer, as I've said before. That wouldn't be my guy. I don't think it's impossible that he could be a good head coach. I think there's a decent chance he could get something out of this team. I just would prefer Kellen Moore, or I mean, I really prefer John Gruden after the audio that we played earlier today of him on Barstool Sports, or, you know, there are other guys that I prefer. Would I prefer Brian Schottenheimer over Doug Peterson? Yeah. I would probably take Schottenheimer over a couple of these other candidates, but it's also not going to be my first name. And I do understand there's got to be a balance of how much do you trust the players lobbying for something because they're comfortable versus because they think they'll get the most out of it.
Right.
And that's the thing that the Cowboys have to figure out right now. Really quickly before we wrap up, Matt Eberflus, that was a name that I had floated and thought made sense connecting dots, and you'd heard from some people like, yeah, that could make some sense. We could reach out, blah, blah. I heard from two people in the last 2 days that said, it does not sound like Matt Eberflus is somebody we're going to entertain over here. So it was not a Eberflus wouldn't want to come here, we can't do this. I just heard from two people that Eberflus did not sound like he was on the table for defensive coordinator.